Stand in any rural surplus yard from western Nebraska to the hill country of Tennessee, and you will see the same thing. A blue corrugated steel arch sitting in the back row with a handwritten card on the door that says $800. 40 feet away, a prefab tiny home with cedar trim and a laminated spec sheet asking $42,000. Same snow on both roofs, same frozen ground underneath. The man who owns a yard will walk you straight to the prefab. He has a reason for that, and it has nothing to do with which structure will still be standing in 30 years, because the arch in the back row is the cheapest legally placeable heated shelter left in this country, and the people who figure that out are not talking about it. This is what they know that you do not. The Quonset hut has been a farm storage joke since 1946. That reputation never left. And it is exactly why one sits for $800 on a gravel lot right now, while the man who owns it cannot give it away. Here is what the reputation gets wrong, and what it is quietly doing for you. The Navy designed this structure during World War II because they needed shelters that could ship flat, cross an ocean in a cargo hold, and go up on a Pacific island in under 4 hours with basic hand tools. They built roughly 160,000 of them between 1941 and 1945. Not one of those buildings was designed to fail. The whole point was a structure that could take whatever the weather threw at it and still be standing in the morning. Think about a man most people know. He drove past a surplus Quonset 3 times on his way to look at $28,000 prefab. The third time, he pulled over, he walked the perimeter, knocked on the steel, looked at the arch ribs, and bought it for $400 because the seller had stopped expecting anyone to stop. 2 years later, he is still in it. The man who paid $28,000 sold a lost 18 months after he moved in. The same thing that makes people call a shed is the exact thing that makes a used one worth stopping for. Modern mini versions, 14-foot, 16-foot, and 20-foot spans, trade through agricultural auction yards and online surplus pipelines for $300 to $500 when they carry cosmetic damage. New kits from domestic suppliers run $1,200 to $1,800. The gap between those two numbers is the reputation doing its work. The first buyer ate the premium. You walk in after the bleeding stopped. $800 for the arch, $42,000 for the prefab. Same footprint, same snow load, same frozen ground underneath both of them. The only thing that changed is the name on the marketing brochure. But the arch is worthless without somewhere legal to put it. That is the variable almost nobody prices before they fall in love with the structure. And the way that problem gets solved is not the way most people expect. Drive the county roads outside any small rural town, and you'll find what the feeder script people found. An elderly man owns 5 acres of scrub land that has gotten away from him. The brush is taking over. The county has sent notices. His son lives in Colorado and comes down twice a year. A man who shows up at the door explains the situation plainly and offers to clear the brush, maintain the fence line, mow the road frontage, and check on the property through winter. That man gets a handshake and a piece of ground in the back 2 acres, out of sight from the road, with access to the outdoor spigot. No lease, no monthly bill. 2 people who each had something the other needed. That kind of arrangement is woven into the fabric of rural land ownership in this country. It is not a loophole. It is just how neighbors have always worked. The alternative is an RV park at $650 to $900 a month, or a storage unit conversion where one complaint ends everything. Compare those numbers to near zero, and you understand why the math only works in one direction. The cheap shelter is real. It just lives on gravel roads, not zip codes or homeowners associations. A mini Quonset kit arrives as a stack of corrugated steel panels, a set of curved arch ribs, a ridge cap, a bag of self-tapping screws, and instructions printed on 2 sheets of paper. That is the whole package. A 14-foot span by 20-foot length gives you 280 square feet of floor space, more room than a studio apartment in 1950. And it goes up with a basic socket set, a cordless drill, and 2 men over a single weekend. The arch ribs bolt together in sequence. The corrugated panels attach with self-tapping screws along each rib. The ridge cap seals the crown. No welder required, no crane. No poured concrete slab for structures inside the permit-exempt footprint. A gravel pad level with longboard or concrete blocks on packed ground handles a foundation for under $80. Here is a thing the kit supplier will not put in the headline. Most mini Quonset kits ship without front and rear end walls. The arch arrives complete. The two flat ends that close the structure from the weather do not. A buyer who does not read past the product photo discovers this on assembly weekend, staring at two open gaps where walls should be. Framing those end walls from lumber and plywood runs $90 to $120 in materials. It is not in the advertised price, and it is not in the brochure. A dented panel does not leak. A gap in the end wall does. Ask the supplier directly whether end walls are included before you pay. Get that answer in writing. The men who skipped that question spent an extra Saturday. They did not plan for in the rain. The arch is up. It is watertight. And inside it, on a July afternoon in South Dakota, it is 140 degrees. That is the next problem. And it is the one that separates every successful build from every failed one. Steel conducts heat with brutal efficiency. In July in South Dakota, an uninsulated Quonset arch reaches 140 degrees inside by noon. In January, the same steel radiates cold inward, and every surface sweats. Summer oven, winter refrigerator. Neither one is a home. Getting from unlivable to livable requires 3 layers, and the order matters. The first goes on the outside. Foil face radiant barrier material wraps the exterior of the arch, secured with adhesive and wire ties. A 14-foot arch takes roughly 2 rolls at $45 to $55 total. That single reflective layer bounces solar radiation before it ever contacts the steel. Peak interior temperatures drop more than 20 degrees before you touch anything on the inside. The hut goes from uninhabitable to uncomfortable. The next 2 layers take it the rest of the way. The second layer is rigid foam board on the interior curve. Construction sites generate dumpsters full of rigid foam cutoffs every week. Partial sheets from commercial jobs that contractors cannot resell and do not want to haul. A man who visits 3 active sites near his county seat and asks the foreman politely collect enough foam to line an entire arch interior inside 2 weeks at no cost. He cuts the panels with a utility knife, bends them to follow the curve, and glues them with construction adhesive. The arch shape holds the panel snug while it sets. The third layer is the one most men skip, and it is the one that destroys the build within a year. Warm air from cooking and breathing its cold steel and turns to water. Mold grows on every surface. The foam, the pallet wood, the mattress, gone. A 50-foot roll of 6 mil plastic sheeting costs $18 to $22 at any hardware store. Stapled to the interior framing before the foam goes up, it stops condensation from ever forming. Those $22 are worth more than any other single purchase in the build. For winters later, the man who did not skip this step has no mold. The man who did is starting over. Before you pour gravel pad or hand anyone $1, one phone call determines whether your $800 arch is a home or a fine waiting to happen. That call goes to the county zoning office. The question is simple. Does a portable structure under 160 square feet on private land with owner permission require a permit in this jurisdiction? The answer varies by county, by state, and by whether your structure is classified as portable or permanent. It is not the same in Custer County, South Dakota, as it is in a platted township outside Columbus, Ohio. You verify for your specific location before you buy the arch, not after. The second distinction is classification. A structure sitting on gravel blocks or a timber sill that can be moved without a crane reads differently in most rural codes than one anchored to a poured concrete foundation. The poured slab triggers permits in places where the gravel pad does not. Ask the zoning clerk which classification applies to your structure. He will tell you if you ask plainly. HOA land and platted subdivision lots are a non-starter in nearly every case. This build works on rural privately owned land with a willing owner. That is the geography it was built for. There is also a paperwork layer nobody warns a dreamer about. A structure with no municipal water or sewer has no street address. Most full-time residents use a family member's address or a mail forwarding service and plant their flag in a state with no income tax. Texas, Florida, Tennessee. That is where the old hands park their registration. One more quiet detail. Try not to be sitting on private land on January 1st. That is the date many states use to assess personal property tax on portable structures. The men who know this are somewhere else that morning. If this is the kind of straight talk nobody else in this space will give you, hit subscribe. The next part is the one the HVAC salesmen really do not want you to watch. A mini split for a 14-foot arch runs $1,200 to $2,000 installed. The HVAC man in the polo shirt will tell you it is the only real option for a metal structure. He makes 30 to 40% margin on that unit. That is a $600 reason to call every alternative a fire hazard. Follow the money, and the advice starts to make a different kind of sense. A well-insulated 280 square foot space with 2 people in it needs less than 5,000 BTU to hold 65 degrees when the outside air sits at 10 above. That is basic physics. The HVAC salesman will not do that calculation in front of you. He is counting on you not doing it either. A diesel forced air heater, the kind sold under commercial outdoor labels, runs $120 to $180, requires no electrical hookup beyond a small battery igniter, and burns pump diesel at $3 to $4 a gallon. A small propane wall heater, vented through a 4-inch hole in the end wall, runs $80 to $150 and refills at any farm co-op or gas station in rural America without a specialist. A small wood stove with a through-roof flue costs $200 to $400 for the unit and $60 to $90 in pipe hardware, and in most rural areas, the fuel is free to anyone willing to cut and split it. None of those options require a licensed installer. None of them require a permit in most rural jurisdictions. And any one of them will heat a properly insulated 280 square foot arch through a Minnesota winter for a fraction of what the mini split costs before it is ever turned on. The arch does not need a $2,000 solution. It needs a $150 one and a man who read the BTU math before he opened his wallet. Here is what the whole build actually costs when a man does the homework and does not take the first price he is shown. The arch itself, surplus unit, dented panels, sourced from an agricultural auction yard, runs $300 to $500. The dents are cosmetic. The price is real. End wall lumber and hardware. To close the structure, add $90 to $120 because the kit does not include them and the weather does not care. A gravel foundation pad or a set of concrete block piers runs $40 to $80, depending on what the ground on the back 2 acres looks like. The radiant barrier wrap for the exterior, which does more work per dollar than anything else on this list, costs $45 to $55. Rigid foam board, pulled from construction dumpsters at no cost, plus the adhesive to glue it up, runs $25 to $40 for what you cannot source free. The vapor barrier, the $22 that protects everything else, goes in before the foam. The heater, diesel or propane, runs $120 to $180 and heats the whole space for less per month than a tank of gas. A door from a Habitat for Humanity restore costs $15 to $25 and locks from the inside. Miscellaneous hardware, caulk, and screws run $30 to $40. Total, $683 to $1,062. Well under $800 when the sourcing is done correctly. There's a man in rural western Nebraska who knows exactly what that number feels like. He sources foam from a commercial construction dumpster outside the county seat. He paid $17 for his door at a Restore 40 Minutes South. He borrowed the socket set from his neighbor and returned it with a case of beer. His total outlay came to $741. He built it over 3 weekends. He did not call a contractor, did not pull a permit, and has not written a rent check since. His monthly living costs run somewhere around $80 to $100 all in, diesel for the heater in January, a propane refill in February, nothing else recurring. A studio apartment in the nearest city of any size runs $950 a month. Same cold winter outside both structures. Different math inside. And before you close this out, here is the 5-step defense. Because naming the trap and leaving you there is worse than useless. First, call the county zoning office before you price the arch. Ask whether a portable structure under 160 square feet on private land with owner permission requires a permit. Get the answer in writing. A zoning clerk who hums and haws is telling you everything you need to know about what is up there. Second, source the arch from a surplus yard or agricultural auction, not a new kit retailer. Inspect the arch ribs for structural integrity. Dented panels are cosmetic. Bent ribs are not. Know the difference before you load it on the truck. Third, do not skip the vapor barrier. It is $22 in one Saturday morning. Without it, you're tearing the entire interior out inside a year and wondering what went wrong. With it, for winters pass without a drop of mold on anything. Fourth, run the BTU calculation for your specific footprint before you buy any heater. A well-insulated 280 square foot space needs less than the salesman will tell you. The man selling you a $1,500 mini split is counting on you not doing that arithmetic yourself. Fifth, confirm where you're legally allowed to live before you fall in love with a piece of ground. A rural county road in western Nebraska and a platted subdivision in suburban Ohio are two completely different answers. One phone call tells you which one you are standing on. Real owners who did the full homework report living in a paid-off arch for somewhere around $80 to $150 a month all in. Treat that as a starting point, not a guarantee. It swings with your land arrangement and your winters. But sit next to $950 a month in rent, and you understand why the men who stop walking past these structures almost never go back to a lease. Picture that field again. The blue arch with snow across the curved roof and warm lamplight showing through the open door. The $42,000 prefab with the laminated spec sheet sitting 40 feet away. Same frozen ground underneath both of them. Same gray winter sky overhead. The only thing that ever separated them was a story somebody told you to protect a margin. The cheap one everybody walked past was a full playbook all along. And the arch that costs even less than this one, the one the surplus dealers bury in the back row, that one is on screen right now.